name is Adie Shub, and I am so delighted to be at this moment in time to tell the story of my son Jadd, who has sacrificed so much of his life to come in this time frame, in the here and now, where it is such an important subject to talk about, and this is around vaccine damage. Many years ago, I always wanted to have children. It was something that I felt was something very important. It felt almost as if I was waiting for the time where I could allow myself to be fully in as nurturer, as mother. So I had my children, I had both my kids in my very, very late 20s, 30s, and it was, I was ready to take this on. Throughout the pregnancy, I felt that this was a very special soul, and I took great care in really being able to eat the right foods, be in the right energies as such, and not to be disturbed by too much stress, as I knew that this child was a sensitive being. And the pregnancy was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. It was a delight to be pregnant with him. And it came to the birth. His birth was out of this world. He came out perfect. His APGAR score was 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. And we watched in awe as this child started waking up and watching his brain being activated. The first smile, the first connection, the first eye contact, the first essence of looking at all his little toes and all his fingers and looking at the perfection of this magnificent child of innocence. I breastfed him. I made sure that there was always beautiful soft music around him and tried to create as harmonious a kind of environment for him to live in and to be in. And then the fateful day came where it was time for his vaccines. So I went to a little clinic just down the road to start with the vaccine program. In the hospital, I resisted the BCG. I just went into, he's too young, let's just wait a little bit until his immune system has built up a little bit. So we went in for the combination of DPT, BCG, and polio drops. And even if you look at that combination, there are three vaccines in one. I mean, now they're having 10 in one. They've got so many different, they've added so many different vaccines to the original rollout of vaccines. And little did I know what was going to happen. I handed over my child because I was doing the responsible thing. As a mother, you were told that this is in order for you to prevent any kind of disease or to put your child in any form of danger. This is something that I needed to do. And throughout the generations, I just followed that same suit of going into the clinic, not questioning, and going into, my goodness, you're giving 3, 6, 7 vaccines, forms of vaccines into my child's body. I didn't even think about this. I went over with radical trust, knowing that they were supporting the health of my child. Gladly handed over my child, and with that, the vaccine was given, and he screamed. I've never seen my child in so much like shock around this vaccine. His arm immediately started swelling, and I could see that this was not right. It just didn't feel right to me. However, my logical mind or soothing mind came in and said, maybe this is just normal, it's just a reactive response. And he went into a very deep sleep pattern for virtually 12 hours, not waking up at all. He'd wake up for feeds and then go directly back to sleep. And as parents, we both went to saying to ourselves, oh, well, that's great. He's sleeping off the vaccine. Isn't this wonderful? His body knows what to do. Within 24 hours, this child was fitting, but I'd never seen a seizure before. It was dramatic. He screamed out, and his body went into he tipped back, and his body went into convulsions, which are called myoclonic seizures. And of course, it was like, what is going on? This child's shaking, he's convulsing. I had never seen it. I was frightened. I was scared. I felt so out of control. I didn't know how to pacify this child. I just held him, and his body was so stiff it was like a plank. And finally, when the seizure released, so he sighed and fell into this deep sleep, literally only to be woken again by another seizure and another and another. At this stage, he was going up to 15 a day in the very early years. My concern was originally from the vaccination, and I went to the clinic and I said, what is going on with my child? And they said, oh, don't worry about it. It's most probably just injected into a muscle. He'll recover, he'll be fine. I said, but what about what's going on with him? There's nothing wrong with the vaccination. It was an endless journey of sitting with this child day in, day out, observing him in high alert, baby monitors 24/7 if you moved away from him because you were waiting for that scream of that convulsion to come through, and to watch his body going into this unbelievable pain. So the journey continued. We started noticing he had extreme food allergies. So we started going through towards the naturopaths, the dietitians, and again they couldn't quite work out what, because he was so food sensitive, everything that we gave him just couldn't be digested. So his diet was extremely limited. Literally for, I think it was about 16 years, he ate the same food day in, day out, because at least we found a food that wasn't going into reaction. He was then diagnosed with eosinophilic gastric disease, which is a very rare disease, and there's such a small percentage of children that get this disease. So yet another understanding of what vaccine did, because it also creates inflammation throughout the whole body. So we recognized that his colon, his digestive system was breaking down. He wasn't able to fully absorb. He used to projectile vomit as soon as he used to eat, and to try and keep food down was hard. But finally we found palatable food that he could take. And of course then came the onslaught of anticonvulsant medication. And sitting with his neurologist, so you are a guinea pig, and you start going through experimentation of these toxic, also wonderful, bless the drugs, because they did control his seizures eventually, but the toxicity of these drugs, especially he was put onto a black box medicine, which I've only just realized now how toxic this medication is. And no neurologist actually said, give it a period of time. You cannot be on this medication for too long. It controlled his seizures. We didn't question it. And this child has been on these particular anticonvulsants for, it must be about, this particular range, about 25 years. So the breakdown of these medications and the side effects, and little did we know that a lot of the side effects that were coming up, it was also connected to the medication. So sleepless nights. He could not lie down because now he was starting with extreme reflux, which was going up his esophagus, burning him so badly that again he couldn't lie down. There was no ways he could sleep. So literally throughout the night we held him sitting upright, trying to catch a minute's sleep, and constantly with this child grinding. And at that stage he sounded a lot. He used to go, and the sound after a period of time with both of us, it's like a tap dripping. It's continuously for 7-8 hours at a time. You start going a little bit crazy. It's like, I've got to get away from this. It's almost like a crying child that does not stop. We had to separate in order just to take a deep breath so that we could almost come back in to console this child who was in so much distress and not knowing what to do, feeling so helpless. So again, homeopathic remedies, I could be a pharmacy. I've got thousands of bottles, one after the other, trying this didn't work, that didn't work, try this combination, then looking at this. Little did we know that we were looking at also massive drug interactions as well as the vaccine. And then again, so his second vaccine was coming up. And again, everybody denied that it could ever be linked to the vaccination. There is no link. Doctors, neurologists, the clinic, he needs to come in for his second dose. So, like a sheep, I just went straight back in and again got them to vaccinate my child for a second time. Well, the seizures continued and continued and continued, and more it seemed like we were losing him again. Again, we got the reassurance that again, this is not the vaccination. You need to take him back. You need to be responsible. We took him back a third time. At this stage, Jadd was, all the development, all the great development and the waking up of this child was diminishing to such an extent. At this stage, he couldn't sit up by himself. And I kept making excuses and saying, oh, he's a boy. And boys always develop later than girls. And I'm sure he's going to come right. And waiting for the opportunity for him to sit by himself, to actually really be able to be part of the human race. And he was just slipping further and further and further away. Not only that, but the enormity of the effect on the family was huge, absolutely mammoth. His father, he couldn't take it to see his little boy just going through so much, and he said, I cannot deal with these seizures, you're going to have to do it. And as a parent, I went into, you've got to come to the party, I can't do this alone. So we used to alternate nights. I used to do one night, he used to do another night, and we continued doing this day in, day out, and still no results. I'm also in the holistic field, I'm a therapist, and even as a mom, where I couldn't go in, and there was nothing that could help my child. And rather than going into poor me or poor Jadd, from the beginning, I knew that this child was a huge child, and that his story was going to be something big one day. I think as a parent, you immediately go into, let me go to specialists, let me go to the top neurologists or doctors to see what is going on. We went to our pediatrician, who said, right, let's set you up for an MRI scan. And again, frightening for this little kid who's going through this tunnel away from his mother. And it was discovered that there was very slight additional fluid over his temporal and his frontal lobe. But the pediatrician said, in no way would this affect his seizure activity. So we went on to Red Cross Hospital, where we worked with Professor Leary, a wonderful, an unbelievable man, and he did his best in ascertaining what was happening with this child. We went through genetic testing. We then went into an invasion of tests with him, blood tests it was just horrific. This poor child was taken away from me to had blood drawn, enormous amounts of blood drawn each time we went there. So again, more procedures, every time sitting all day at these hospitals waiting for our turn, and finally we go through this assault on his body. And of course we were only too available to just find out what is going on. Please give us an understanding. And he kept on shrugging his shoulders and going into, we just need to do more tests, more tests, more tests. 9 years later, he said, we have gone through every test, we've done everything possible for this child. We don't know what's going on with him. We have no idea whatsoever. It's not in his genetics, it's basically you both clear. We can't understand, he's not CP, he's not autistic, but we cannot work out the reason. At this stage, I had gone through to every professor, every specialist in town, and I then started going more towards homeopathy and natural medicine, as at this stage, the medical field were just not helping him. They were putting him onto major anticonvulsant drugs, as well as just trying to give him medication for his pain at this particular stage, and it just wasn't working for me. So I started consulting with numerous top homeopaths, and it was interesting because one of these homeopaths handed me a book which was called DPT, A Shot in the Dark, and as I started reading this book, suddenly it was almost a relief in a way, because suddenly somebody was seeing my child and connecting it to the vaccination. Anyway, I went back to the professor and I said to him, Prof, please tell me, could this be connected to vaccine damage? And his answer was, yes, Adie, it most probably is, but you're never going to be able to prove it. Well, this really got me onto a mission, because I was determined to now find the cause of my son's chaos. So I then started going very public and trying to see if I could get even more understanding of other children who had been vaccine damaged. There was a case many, many years ago where this child died from vaccine damage in the UK, and I started going into, I really believe that I need to get hold of lawyers. At which stage I was warned. I was told, don't even go there. They will take you out. They will absolutely take you out. And, you know, you are like a little ant in the equation. They have so much money, and I wouldn't go that route. I spoke to doctors. I said to them, please stand with me. This is definitely connected to vaccine damage. I saw it immediately after the event. And they too said, we cannot stand with you. We cannot stand. They will move us out of our careers. They'll close us down. We cannot stand with you. I started then going on media. I went onto radio. I went into newspapers. And each time I was shut down. It was just so heartbreaking. I had a dream which was just so big. I dreamt that Jadd was going to be healed by the dolphins. So I did a fundraiser, and I said, I need to take my child to Florida to go and swim with these amazing dolphins that work with disabled children, and they get incredible results. The dolphins are known, they create sonar, they sound through sonar, and when the sonar moves into the body, so also certain organs, each organ has a resonance or a vibration that is sent back. The dolphin intelligence is so huge that they can see exactly the vibration of the organ or whatever's in dysfunction, and they tone in their particular way to bring balance to that particular organ. But it was quite a hard journey, because before we got onto the flight, so this homeopath gave me tuberculicum, which it's connected to TB, and he had a very severe reaction. Even on a homeopathic level, he was disturbed by that frequency. So we had a hell of a ride all the way to London, and still had to get through to America with a desperately ill child. And we arrived in Florida, and it was, all I wanted to do was just get to the dolphins so that they could actually come through in their huge compassion, just to come and help my child. So we sneaked in the middle of the afternoon when nobody was around, and all the dolphins came. They just congregated, and they came up to meet Jadd. And it was the most magical experience. Soon enough, they found us on the property, and they chased us out, and they said that we could not work with the dolphins if there was any viruses that were in Jadd's body, because it would be harmful to the dolphins. So they insisted that we go to the hospital and get jabbed once again with an antibiotic before we could go through this procedure. Again, there was not much choice, because we were literally in a corner, so we decided to do that. And he then went into the water with the dolphins. At that stage, he was in another world, because when he had the vaccine, we could literally see he completely left his body. He wasn't with us anymore. From being an alert child whose attention was so immaculate, he then ended up just looking above our heads, and even if there was an animal, a person or whatever, it was almost as if he did not see them. These dolphins were incredible. They had trainers in the water with them, and they did OT, they did physio in the water, and the dolphins assisted them, which was incredible. And as a reward, so they could hold onto the fin and the dolphin would take them for a ride, which was absolutely incredible. This one particular dolphin, which is one of Jadd's particular mentors through this journey, his name was Duke, and he was attached to Jadd like no other. Every time Jadd used to come in, so this dolphin used to come and meet him and literally rise out the water in greetings. He brought him gifts from the sea, which was incredible. It was phenomenal to see the compassion of these beautiful beings. And we stayed with them for literally, it must have been 2 months, where we worked with them every single day. And that was when Jadd said his first word. As he came out of the pool, he said, "Good, good." And I turned to this child and I went, "What did you just say?" And he said, "Good." That was his one and only word that he ever spoke again. But through being with the dolphins, he started giving us yeses, which is amazing, by closing his eyes and being able to understand what we were trying to communicate. This was the greatest joy for us, because literally seeing a child who was so out of body with shock and disturbance to his whole psyche and his spiritual being, suddenly we could see that there was recognition, that there was understanding, and that finally he was starting to connect with us. So we finished this amazing journey with the dolphins and we came back home. And everybody looked at Jadd and said, "Well, he still looks very much the same." And we went, you have no idea. Finally, we can actually get some kind of understanding from Jadd that he is picking up, he's understanding us. He was starting to just come into presence, literally, in his body. The amount of modalities that I went through was unbelievable, from faith healers to quantum physicists to dietitians, physio, occupational therapy, desensitization to try and get him to be tactile, less insensitive. Specialists that work with the stomach, because his stomach was in chaos. His organs were getting inflamed, and again, nobody could help him. And again, I kept on going, this is bigger, this is rise above it, rise above it. And thank God, that's all I can say, is I kept on going into teacher. This has got to. Do I have to walk this path of resilience, of really being able to rise up each and every time, no matter what? There was no time to process. You were literally in survival mechanism, waiting for the next enormity of the seizure that was going to take him out. Even one seizure broke his leg in half. The seizure was so intense that it took his femur and snapped it in half. And here this child is going into, again, second word, ow, ow, ow. And I went into, it must be his stomach, giving him homeopathic, because again, he can't talk. And he is in excruciating pain, and only when I moved him did I see that there was something going on. So then we had to take him through to the hospital with this broken leg. By this stage, he couldn't extend his legs, so his tendons were exceptionally tight. So they take him into hospital, and here they have to straighten the broken leg and stretch the tendons in order to put a cast on, which was beyond excruciating for him. I have never seen a child. It was like an animal that was being tormented. And so we had this disabled child with this leg that was sitting out, and having to carry this child for for absolute decades, it was, besides the leg, we carried him wherever we went because, again, take him outside, move him outside, put him under the trees, take him on holiday, move him around. Eventually my back, I couldn't sustain it anymore. And I went to various back people and they said to me, your back's giving in. You've got to have back surgery, spinal surgery. And I went, oh my goodness, who's going to look after this child? I'm the only breadwinner. I'm the only real support he has here. I cannot do this. I can't go into hospital. Who's going to work? How's he going to survive? So we went through, like, even being the sole breadwinner, having to go into work, and he's in intensive care, but I've got to keep the money generating. And here I'm so exhausted, my hands are shaking and I can't even work because of the trauma of what's really going on. Kept going back to the hospital, trying to keep myself as resilient as possible to keep this child going. And it was breaking me more and more and more. And that was when I decided, it was almost, doctors were saying, you've got to put this child in a home. It was something I swore I would never do, is abandon my child and put him in a home. And the day came where I had to take him because it was either him or myself. And it was heartbreaking to take this child to this home. They did it very sensitively. They brought him in slowly, a couple of hours each day, and so we had extended. And then the final day came where I had to leave him. This child, they didn't tell me, he wept for 2 days. He was devastated. It was the hardest thing and yet the most liberating experience of my life because suddenly I was given a breather. I could actually just go into taking a deep inhalation and going into, I can just put back in and restore myself, knowing he's in a safe place, knowing that he's being monitored, and to be amongst others who also are not okay. Jadd's will is so strong that, again, doctors said he would not survive 7 years. He is now 30 years old. He has survived what one can consider an onslaught of pain and discomfort and not being able to say, Mommy, my knee sore. He fractured his knee, he's fractured his rib, he's got a rib sticking out, and I noticed this child getting thinner and thinner and thinner. His digestive system, he was not absorbing. And I thought, there were times where he was in so much pain that I actually was considering taking him off to Switzerland to euthanize him because I thought that was the kindest thing to do, that he cannot live this life in the pain that he was going through. It broke our hearts. There was nothing that we could do. I got over that. I got over it, and the home gave me that breather also just to step back a little bit. And then came the time where he was losing his light. His light was going out, and I could see he was going into depression. And this urge came in, and I said, I've got to bring this child back home. 64 years old, and here I'm back to carrying my disabled child. At this stage, I realized that I can't do it. I cannot carry the enormity of this heaviness. Even though he was thin, he was still a heavy weight because he cannot assist you. So I had to call in carers day and night.
I'm Joanne Peterson. I've been taking care of Jadd for nearly 7 years. I've been his carer, but more than that, we've become very good friends. To me, Jadd doesn't speak, but he can understand. And his body language and the way he communicates is amazing. I've come to know for this almost 7 years what is Jadd's dislikes and likes. If he doesn't like food, if I made some lunch for him and he did not like that lunch, he would immediately show me, I don't like this. If something is too sour and I need to put some honey in, he'll show me. Jadd's not just my resident, but he's a friend. He's a very, very good listener. And when I would make jokes or tease him, he would laugh. He's got his moments, so we know when he's feeling good or where he's not feeling good. My activities that I do with Jadd is mostly when it's nice and sunny. We go for a nice walk outside, which he enjoys a lot. He would look at the trees and look at the birds in the road and just the cars passing by. He just loves his surrounding. And then I would also just take him in the garden and go and sit with him there. And I would sometimes read a story which he listens to. You know, with non-verbal people, it's not that they don't understand or can't communicate with you. They understand completely. They show you with their body language, with their actions.
Morning, happy man. Good morning. Say good morning to Mom. Good morning.
My message today to everyone out there who is looking after someone that's nonverbal, just try to find out what is their kind of personality. What do they like? Just look at their body language, look at their eyes, because Jadd has a way of speaking with his eyes, smiling with his eyes. And if he says yes, he will close his eyes, just nod it like that. I mean, just close it. That's yes. And if he says no, he would do something like that, or you would just see he takes his hands and just puts it like that, and it's like no. Or he doesn't like to be forced. If he doesn't want to eat something, you can do nothing about it because he's very strong-willed. He doesn't like to be forced, so you should speak to him. Because, I mean, he's non-verbal, but he understands everything. He understands, I mean, he's totally normal. I mean, this is what the vaccine has done to Jadd. And thank God it didn't touch his brain because he understands everything. I'm so grateful to be here with Jadd and him teaching me. I never knew that this would happen and that he would be the messenger, because I'm speaking right now, but this is his message, giving out to the world and to mothers out there to be careful.
Now we are in a situation which is, it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. He's got to a point where, we've discovered that he is in extreme anemia. His heart is beating at a rate that is, it's indescribable. It's his heart is literally jumping out of his chest. It is beating at, it has taken so much strain that it's overdeveloped. It's gone into growing, and his heart's going to give him. There's nothing we can do. We can give him blood transfusions. We can give him iron. He refused the iron. He couldn't take it. It was just so bitter. He couldn't do anything. There was nothing we could do to bring this child back. So we decided, okay, no transfusions. And this child he's on his way out. And it makes me so angry and so upset that not only did the pharmaceutical companies take out this beautiful child with so much potential, his life, his light, but the drugs that were there to support the damage have then added another layer of extreme and utter chaos and degradation of his body. Now, to get him off these drugs, we stand the chance of him going back into full-on seizures, and because his bones are so weak, the chance of breaking. So now, at this pivotal time where this is so controversial, and people are going to see Jadd and they're going to go, well, this is a very severe case. Please understand that the severity of Jadd, the severity that it's hidden. It's not there right now. It can come up years later. Symptoms, the degradation of the body through the poison, toxic stew that they're putting into vaccines is mind-boggling. And to see how many ingredients are in, it breaks my heart that information is being blocked around the reality of the vaccine story. Trust your intuition, trust your own inner knowing, become your own inner physician and your own physician so that you can really go into a deep study around all of these ingredients that are being, and monitor them, break them down. It's not now, it's in the future. You will get the arguments, again, of so many people survived smallpox or polio, and thank goodness for vaccinations. But be discerning. It's getting more and more corrupt as we are going through our generations, and the money that's involved is huge. Did the pharmaceutical company come and apologize? Did they offer any assistance? No. When you see vaccine injury, that's when it becomes a reality. When you see these children that are shaking and convulsing, it's not only for the children, it's for adults as well. But I think Jadd's story is so much to warn mothers to really, they've taken such good care through their pregnancy to give them the child the best start in life. And it's pause, stop. Your doctor, if he's telling you to go and get vaccinated, go and do your own research. Don't trust the medical fraternity. It's time for us to rise up, take back our power, and really hold our certain belief structures that, again, you can be the lion and not the sheep and walk through with the courage of that lion. Remember, the lion walks alone. It takes a lot of determination and strength to stand up for your rights, to stick to your judgment, your inner voice. Nobody can tell you. You've got to find that answer deep within inside of yourself. Stop, pause, make a sensible decision by really going out and doing the full research. You've got the time. You don't need to do it now. Wait, hold back, go and get the research, go and get the understanding, and that'll get you just to, almost like a comma, take a deep breath, just settle down within inside of yourself, go and get informed, and then see how you feel. His message is, do not let your children suffer the way that I have suffered. Let my life not be in vain, so that my terrible reaction to vaccines and ingredients can be the message for others. Each life that he has managed to save has created his journey, his purpose, and instead of being in a world of silence, locked away, he's now coming out at this important time in our history in order to educate those that really need the information. Jadd, my darling, we've come to this particular point in order for you to get your message out. Are you very happy with this, my love? We've waited so long for this, my love. We've waited and waited and waited for this time, and this message is going right out across the world in order for you to make your difference, your completion,